Have you ever felt like you're constantly trying to be the good person? Always saying yes when you mean no, putting others' needs ahead of your own, and bending over backwards just to keep the peace? If so, you're not alone. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of people-pleasing, trying to meet everyone's expectations while sacrificing your own happiness and authenticity in the process. In today's video, we're diving into the Stoic philosophy and why the pursuit of being a good person is actually holding you back. The Stoics didn't teach us to follow the crowd or live by society's standards of goodness. Instead, they encouraged us to align with our true selves, act with integrity, and live according to our highest values. We'll explore how this false sense of goodness can trap you in a cycle of self-sacrifice and how, by embracing your authenticity, you can break free. True freedom doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from respecting yourself and acting from a place of inner strength. So if you're tired of trying to be good and want to live on your own terms, stick around. This video will change the way you look at self-respect and personal power. Number 1, the Stoic cost of being good. Have you ever stopped to question what the world truly respects? Look around, not at what people say, but at what they reward. Who are the ones with power, influence, and a voice? Is it the most honest, generous, and compassionate? Or is it the most composed, the clearest in their boundaries, and the least susceptible to being manipulated? The truth is difficult to accept. Goodness alone does not command respect. In fact, blind kindness, when disconnected from strength, often leads to your quiet dismissal. You can spend years being loyal, helpful, always available, but the moment your presence no longer serves the interests of others, you're not only overlooked, you're erased. No outcry, no apology, just replaced. I remember a friend who worked tirelessly at her job, always the first to volunteer, constantly going out of her way to support the team. She avoided conflict, took on extra work without complaint, and genuinely believed that her goodness would be recognized. But when budget cuts came, she was among the first to be let go. No conversation, no thanks, just a cold email. It wasn't a reflection of her value as a person, but of how little weight she carried in a system that equates silence with dispensability. The Stoics understood this long before it became a bitter modern reality. Marcus Aurelius, as emperor and philosopher, lived with both a compassionate heart and a disciplined hand. He didn't confuse virtue with submission. He knew that virtue without discernment becomes a weight others can exploit. Seneca warned us of this too, that one must never lose oneself in the service of others. For that is not humility, but self-betrayal. When you constantly try to be good, to be agreeable, to avoid friction, to always say yes, you unknowingly tell the world, you can ignore me, I pose no consequence. But where there is no weight, there is no respect. You are not seen as a person, but as a convenience. Not as a presence, but as a resource. Why are those who set boundaries more respected than those who never say no? Why do those who speak plainly command more space than those who seek constant approval? Because they don't hand over their dignity for acceptance. They don't beg to be seen. They choose to be visible, through clarity, through principle, through presence. The Stoic way is not about being feared, but about being immovable in your values. That is where true respect begins, not in loudness or aggression, but in the quiet certainty that you cannot be moved by flattery nor destroyed by rejection. Machiavelli once wrote that if a leader must choose between being loved and feared, he should choose fear. But what the Stoics would offer instead is this: choose respect, born from inner firmness. Choose to be someone who can act when needed, who carries a subtle consequence, not out of threat, but out of integrity. That kind of presence doesn't need to shout. It simply refuses to be ignored. So ask yourself, what is it within you that keeps reaching for external approval? What longing makes you soften your voice, suppress your truth, betray your own time and peace? Often, what we call kindness is not strength. It's an attempt to avoid discomfort, to flee conflict, to be accepted at all costs. But the Stoics would tell you, a peace earned by self-erasure is no peace at all. And that is exactly what we will examine next. Where this compulsive need to be liked comes from, and how reclaiming your self-respect may begin by standing still, saying less, and letting silence do the work. Number 2, the Stoic origin of pleasing others. No one is born desperate for approval. That need, the constant urge to please, to be agreeable, to appear good, was not inherent to you. It was something you were taught. From the very beginning of your life, the world began shaping you, not through wisdom, but through correction. You were taught that in order to be accepted, you had to conform. Don't do that. That's not nice. Be polite. Don't speak like that. You'll upset them. Over time, you internalized a silent lesson. To be loved, you must not disturb others. So you began hiding your sharp edges. You tucked away your voice. You swapped honesty for harmony. And each time you did, you surrendered a part of your will. Your prohoresis, as the Stoics called it. What started as a survival strategy slowly turned into a habit of self-erasure. Today, you might call it empathy, humility, or kindness. But look closer. When you say yes, even when your soul says no, when you suppress your frustration until it poisons your silence, what virtue is that? The Stoics would call it weak assent, a collapse of inner clarity. It is not kindness when it costs you your truth. It is not virtue when it demands your obedience to fear. Take the story of Adam, a quiet and considerate man. He worked as a manager in a small but busy firm. Known for his willingness to always lend a hand, Adam was the go-to person for his colleagues, whether it was staying late to finish tasks or offering help with complex projects. His co-workers appreciated his availability and his unspoken commitment to their success. But Adam felt the weight of it. He had learned early on that helping others was the quickest way to earn appreciation, so he kept giving time, energy, and resources. Over time, though, he started to feel overwhelmed, not only by the work itself, but also by the constant emotional drain of always trying to meet everyone's needs. One day, after a particularly long stretch of helping others, Adam was asked to pick up yet another task. Instead of feeling pride or fulfillment, he felt a deep sense of exhaustion and resignation. It was then he realized he had stopped doing things for his own peace. He had been living to please others, losing touch with what he truly needed. This is what happens when you confuse acceptance with worth. You begin to believe that being agreeable will keep you safe, but safety built on silence is a cage. Seneca warned us, "He who always agrees with the crowd, even in good times, is already preparing his downfall." The fear of being disliked is not Stoic humility. It is slavery to perception. It places the judgment of others above your own reason, your logos, and it erodes your integrity. Ask yourself, why does saying no make you feel guilty? Why does expressing disapproval feel like betrayal? Why do you equate self-respect with selfishness? The Stoics would tell you, because you've lost your center. You've confused virtue with performance. And this performance is exhausting because it has no end. Today they like you, tomorrow they don't. And all the while, your true self withers in the shadows. This mask of goodness, polished, agreeable, silent, was never yours to wear. It was stitched from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of exclusion, fear of not being enough. But fear is not a Stoic teacher. It distorts perception, leads to false choices, and robs you of ataraxia, the inner peace that comes from living in alignment with your own reasoned choice. True virtue doesn't bend for approval, it stands firm. Marcus Aurelius never asked to be loved. He asked to be just. Epictetus didn't beg others to understand him. He focused on understanding himself. This is your task too, to reclaim your mind, your values, your voice. The world may misunderstand your boundaries. Let them. The cost of pleasing everyone is the permanent sacrifice of yourself. There is a better way. And to find it, we must study not only the Stoics, but also figures like Machiavelli, who understood that appearance is a currency, but one that must be governed, not worshipped. To live authentically, free from the weight of others' expectations, requires a continual re-examination of our choices and actions. The question is not whether you can please others, but whether you can stand firm in your own truth, regardless of their approval. This process takes courage, but it also brings liberation. Liberation from the constant fear of judgment and the ability to live with clarity and purpose. In the next part, we'll explore what the prince can teach us about escaping the trap of being seen as good, and instead being respected as someone who acts with clarity, presence, and unapologetic strength. Number 3, the Stoic strength behind the illusion of goodness. If you're still moving through life thinking that your moral integrity will be recognized and rewarded automatically, take a moment to reconsider. The Stoics never promised that the world would honor your virtue. Instead, they taught that the wise person must hold on to virtue while remaining vigilant, for the world often values appearances over substance. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled with both compassion and resolve, wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." However, he never claimed that being virtuous would protect you. In fact, he understood that those who appear weak, even if they're not, are often treated as weak. Take the example of David, a dedicated teacher at a public school. He poured his heart into his students, ensuring they had the knowledge and resources they needed to succeed. He was fair, patient, and always took the time to listen. Yet despite his commitment and efforts, his colleagues who were less invested in their work but had better self-promotion skills often received the recognition, accolades, and promotions. One day, after watching yet another less experienced teacher get acknowledged for an award David knew he deserved, he had an epiphany. His deep integrity and fairness weren't enough to secure the success he longed for. He realized that his quiet dedication, though virtuous, was being overlooked because he didn't assert himself in a world that valued visibility as much as competence. Stoicism teaches that true goodness lies in virtue, living according to reason, wisdom, courage, and justice, rather than in external circumstances or appearances. The illusion of goodness refers to the societal tendency to associate goodness with outcomes like success, wealth, or status. For Stoics, these external factors are indifferent. Stoic strength comes from internal resilience and the ability to remain virtuous regardless of external judgments. The illusion of goodness, therefore, can be a trap as it distracts from the pursuit of genuine virtue, which is the true source of strength. The Stoic view is that virtue alone is good, and anything else is neither inherently good nor bad, thus freeing individuals from the need to chase after transient external markers of goodness. You may act with fairness and live with honesty, but if your presence doesn't carry weight, if you're easy to overlook, you will be ignored. Epictetus emphasized this idea even further. He taught that it's not enough to simply possess inner virtue. You must also know how to present yourself in a world that sees only the outward shell, not the heart. You are a role, he said, and your job is to play it with excellence. But be mindful. Not everyone in the audience is watching with admiration. What people perceive, they often believe. And if they perceive softness without structure, you will be exploited. Seneca, writing from within the brutal court of Nero, put it bluntly, "He who always acts like a good man among those who are not prepares his own ruin." The Stoic doesn't abandon virtue, but he doesn't wear it like a costume. He wields it like a sword, sharp, balanced, and silent unless it's needed. In the real world, kindness alone isn't enough to ensure survival. That's why Marcus Aurelius warned that the best revenge is to be unlike those who harm you, not out of retreat, but because you rise above it. Your true strength lies not in retaliation, but in establishing your presence and setting boundaries. A true Stoic must be as perceptive as a philosopher and as composed as a warrior. The Stoics never preached naivety. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire torn by betrayal and conflict. Epictetus was once a slave who endured hardship with unwavering poise. Seneca navigated one of the most treacherous political environments in history. None of them mistook morality for weakness. They understood that, in a world full of manipulators, you must be prepared, not paranoid but precise. Seneca once said, "You must live among the wicked, but live like yourself." This is the middle path. It doesn't ask you to become cold. It demands clarity. It requires that you stop expecting life to reward your goodness and start living as someone who understands others, but remains true to himself. This is not cruelty, it's wisdom. To walk the Stoic path is not to avoid harm, but to become someone who cannot be manipulated by the fear of harm. It's about seeing through flattery, silence, and manipulation with clarity and responding to injustice, not with weakness, but with measured power. So no, you don't have to become ruthless, but you do need to stop being blind. And now, perhaps you wonder, how do I walk that fine line? How do I avoid becoming bitter or hardened while also refusing to let myself be taken advantage of? That is the next truth we will explore together. There is a path between submission and aggression, and it begins the moment you stop apologizing for standing firm in your convictions. Number 4, the Stoic line between virtue and voluntary slavery. Imagine being held captive not by chains, but by desires, fears, and societal expectations. This is the essence of voluntary slavery, where one willingly surrenders their inner freedom in pursuit of external validation or fleeting comforts. Stoicism offers a stark contrast. Virtue, the true freedom, is found in living according to reason, aligning actions with wisdom, courage, and justice. The Stoic line between virtue and voluntary slavery is defined by this choice. To be free is to master oneself, to remain unshackled by anything outside of one's control, while voluntary slavery is choosing to be enslaved by the whims of fortune and external circumstances. There is a subtle but destructive confusion that affects many. The idea that to be virtuous, one must be agreeable in every situation. That true virtue is determined by how much injustice you can silently endure, how often you forgive without consideration, and how easily you erase your own identity to maintain peace. But let's be clear, this is not kindness, it is naivety. It is weakness disguised as virtue. If you fail to distinguish between the two, you will remain an emotional servant to the world, useful, agreeable, and ultimately disposable. True Stoic kindness does not require you to disappear. It demands clarity. It involves prohairesis, the rational faculty that governs your choices. To be virtuous does not mean you must be a constant presence, always smiling, always self-sacrificing for people who would never offer the same in return. That is not virtue. That is self-betrayal, an abandonment of your own reason and dignity. As Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Constant self-erasure is the act of avoiding friction, never drawing boundaries, never allowing your values to face resistance. The trap of naive goodness is in expecting the world to reflect your own heart. It believes that fairness will be returned, kindness will be reciprocated, and sacrifices will be recognized. Instead, it often leads to disillusionment, quiet bitterness, and unspoken resentment. This occurs because naive goodness projects nobility onto others who have not earned it. It creates an internal conflict between what you give and what you never receive in return. The Stoics offer a more refined approach. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people would lie, cheat, and disappoint, but he must remain true to his own nature. Nowhere did he say that enduring abuse was a requirement of virtue. Likewise, Epictetus advised that you should stop attaching value to things outside your control, such as the opinions of others and their approval of your goodness. These things are beyond your command. True Stoic kindness is firm. It establishes boundaries, says no when necessary, and walks away when required. It recognizes that not everyone deserves your best, and giving your best to those who drain you is not generosity, but mismanagement of your soul. You can be just, compassionate, and deeply rooted in principle, and still be respected. You can still be feared. You can be someone others think twice before crossing. Strength, when combined with compassion, becomes presence. It becomes influence. Stoicism teaches that wisdom lies not in blind compliance, but in maintaining your integrity while facing adversity. To be virtuous is not to be passive, but to act with purpose and clarity in every situation. Strength in virtue comes not from suppressing your desires or needs, but from aligning your actions with your values, even when it means making difficult choices or confronting uncomfortable truths. When you live by this principle, others will respect you not because you are always agreeable, but because you stand firmly for what is right, regardless of the consequences. The Stoics did not promote cruelty, but they despised self-delusion, And there is no greater self-delusion than believing that virtue requires you to accept mistreatment in silence. The key question to ask yourself is simple. Is your kindness preserving your dignity, or is it exposing your vulnerability? Is your kindness rooted in strength, or in the fear of rejection if you set boundaries? If your version of goodness involves accepting the bare minimum, hiding your anger, justifying disrespect, and silencing your own needs, then you are not being virtuous. You are allowing yourself to be dominated. And domination has no place in a Stoic life. There is another way, a way where you don't have to compromise your values or bend to others' will. A place where courage and compassion meet, where you speak clearly, not loudly, where you can love but never beg, help but never be used, forgive but never forget. In the next section, we will explore how to find this balance, how to stop being nice without becoming hardened, and how to reclaim your space in the world calmly, deliberately, and without betraying your soul. Because your life doesn't need more politeness, it needs more power anchored in virtue. And this is where it all begins. Number 5, the Stoic path to inner strength. Many who awaken to the truth of their own compliance fall into a subtle trap. After years of saying yes when they meant no, of allowing their peace to be eroded for the sake of others, they decide, never again. But what follows isn't always strength. It's the opposite mask. They become rigid, cold, withdrawn. They believe that to escape being too nice, they must become unfeeling. This is what the Stoics would call a reaction born from imbalance, not wisdom. It is not transformation. It is overcorrection. And like all extremes, it is a form of captivity. Because when you abandon your nature in the name of survival, you're not stepping into power. You're shielding yourself with avoidance. That's not freedom. That's fear in disguise. True liberation comes not by becoming the opposite of who you were, but by returning to your center. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is a slave to his reactions." Freedom is acting from choice, not from wounded reflex. It is when you stop performing virtue for the crowd and start living with alignment, not apology. So how do you stop being nice without betraying your essence? First, reclaim your voice. You may have been taught that speaking up, setting limits, or disagreeing makes you selfish. But selfishness is not asserting yourself. Selfishness is demanding that someone else stay small to keep you comfortable. The Stoic understands that speaking truth without cruelty is not arrogance. It is dignity. When you say, "I do not accept this," you are not causing harm. You are honoring your reasoned judgment, your proheresis, which is the heart of Stoic strength. Second, learn the art of refusal. No is not a wall. It is a declaration of value. It doesn't need to be shouted or justified. A quiet, unwavering no, spoken from clarity, carries more power than 1,000 explanations. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. That applies just as much to your boundaries as it does to your behavior. Those who never learn to say no will always be governed by those who never ask for permission. Third, notice who resists your transformation. When you begin to shift, when you stop making yourself smaller, there will be those who react. They'll call you difficult, changed, selfish. But as Epictetus would say, it's not what they say, it's how you respond that matters. These are not signs of failure. They are evidence that you are breaking the quiet contract that allowed others to benefit from your silence. Growth to those who depended on your compliance feels like betrayal. Don't mistake their discomfort for your mistake. Fourth, stop seeking universal understanding. Not everyone will understand your evolution. They're not meant to. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one." Your task is not to keep up appearances. It is to maintain alignment. You owe no loyalty to the version of you that kept others comfortable. Your loyalty is to the self that stands upright, even when misunderstood. Fifth, replace the desire to be accepted with a commitment to authenticity. When you act from truth rather than people-pleasing, you might unsettle some, but you will inspire others. More importantly, you will respect yourself. And self-respect is the only kind of respect no one can revoke. This journey doesn't require you to become harsh. It requires you to become whole. Seneca never asked us to be feared. He asked us to be firm. And Marcus Aurelius never asked us to please. He asked us to live in accordance with our highest reasoning. This is not a journey of ego, but of essence. Stoicism does not ask us to reject emotion, but to guide it through reason. To stand firm is not to be immovable, it is to be intentional. Life will challenge your boundaries, test your convictions, and invite you back into patterns of self-abandonment. But each moment is an opportunity to choose differently, not with rage, not with resentment, but with grounded clarity. In a world that rewards performance over presence, choosing alignment is a quiet rebellion. It means daring to live without explanation, to speak with conviction, to say no without guilt and yes without fear. It means remembering that peace is not found in pleasing everyone. It's found in no longer betraying yourself. This is the Stoic path to inner strength, not in armor, but in authenticity. Number 6, the Stoic decision to reclaim yourself. Let's stop pretending. How long will you keep wearing the mask of the good one, soft-spoken, ever available, endlessly agreeable? How long will you trade your time, your voice, your dignity, just to uphold an image that was never truly yours, but one the world conveniently expects of you? This is not virtue. It is not nobility. It is captivity, a silent imprisonment decorated with polite praise for being predictable, for not being a threat, for being easy to ignore. But here's the truth no one dares to say. No one is coming to free you. No one will suddenly reward your silence. No one will hand you back the years you gave away trying to please. Because as long as you make yourself useful to others at the expense of yourself, someone will always be ready to use you. That's not cruelty. That's the nature of the world. And as the Stoics remind us, nature does not adjust to your good intentions. It responds to your actions. You can continue playing the role society wrote for you, calm, selfless, understanding, endlessly tolerant, but prepare to be overlooked. Prepare to feel resentment quietly erode your days. Prepare to vanish inside the very kindness you thought would protect you. Or you can wake up. You can decide that your generosity will no longer be automatic, that it will be offered, not extracted, that your kindness will flow from strength, not fear, that you will no longer seek approval like a beggar at the door of validation. Reclaiming yourself doesn't mean becoming unkind or distant. It means drawing boundaries with clarity and living from intention, not obligation. It's the quiet but powerful decision to honor your values, to act with purpose rather than performance, and to live as the author of your own life rather than a character in someone else's story. This is not rebellion, it's alignment. And in that alignment, there is peace deeper than approval and strength greater than control. Imagine what your life would look like if every decision came from a place of self-worth, not fear. Imagine no longer shrinking to fit in, but standing tall in your truth. Imagine relationships built not on pleasing others, but on mutual respect. That version of you, the one who walks with quiet confidence and speaks with honest clarity, is not a dream. It's who you become the moment you stop betraying yourself to meet someone else's expectations. Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt truly connected to your own desires, free from the pressure to please others? How often do you silence your own voice to make room for someone else's? Reclaiming yourself starts with these simple yet powerful questions. It's about pausing and acknowledging that your worth doesn't depend on approval or compliance. Every time you choose to speak your truth, set boundaries, or say no, you reclaim a piece of your power. The act of asking yourself these questions is the first step toward breaking free from the unconscious patterns that have kept you stuck in a cycle of self-sacrifice for the comfort of others. Because freedom, the kind the Stoics spoke of, is not found in pleasing others. It's found in self-respect. And the moment you stop asking for permission to exist is the moment you finally become untouchable. If this message stirred something in you, don't just walk away. Subscribe and stay with us. There's more truth ahead.